and welcome to Get Messy. I'm your host, Maddie, and today I get to sit down with the multi-talented artist, Jim Meskimen. Jim is an actor, a voiceover artist, an improviser, an impressionist, a visual artist, and a creator. Jim has always lived a creative life and was influenced by his Emmy-nominated mother, Marion Ross. We discussed the philosophy of creativity and how we're always creating from nothing, the importance of curiosity and persistence, and the balance between the need to promote yourself and your work professionally while always honing your craft. We talk about self-taping, how to let people know you're available, and how Jim embraces change in an industry that's constantly changing at a chaotic pace. We also talk about Jim's experience working on seasons 1 and 2 of Landman, which season 2 just premiered this week on Paramount Plus, so check it out. What it was like directing multicast audiobooks, and the current development of his film about a down-on-his-luck impressionist, which he's developing and he's also starring in. This is such a great conversation with someone who's been in the game, and Jim knows how to maintain creativity. He understands the importance of taking action and how you have to get over the cringe of self-promotion, and also how vital it is to maintain a persistent attitude while you go after your dreams. Also, I don't know if we have any Mary-Kate and Ashley fans in the house. I was a big Mary-Kate and Ashley fan growing up, but Jim played their dad in the awesome Our Lips Are Sealed, which was one of my favorite Mary-Kate and Ashley movies. So without further ado, please welcome the iconic Jim Meskimen. Jim, thank you so much for being here. I'm very, very excited. I just looked at all the questions I prepped. I had too much fun prepping for this interview. And just to kick us off, I'm going to do an intro for you before this, but can you give a quick spark notes of who you are, what you do, any important snippets of your story to kind of kick off our chat?
Spark notes. I don't know that expression. That's great.
Yeah.
I've lived the life of an artist most of my life. I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to work as an illustrator, painter, cartoonist, voiceover guy, actor, improviser. I've had a very creative life, and I continue to create it every day. I always feel like I'm just starting out, which is a way to stay young. I learned a lot of it from my mom, Marion Ross, who was an actress for many, many years and set a great example for me. And yeah, I just feel very grateful.
Yeah. No, and I mean, like you said, you come from such a creative family, and your daughter's a creative, your wife's also a creative, and you've had so many different avenues to express your creativity between voiceover and acting, and you're an impressionist, a visual artist. I think that sometimes when we are in these creative fields, sometimes there's that spark and we just feel the creativity and we flow that into a project. And other times we need to reignite that creative spark for ourselves. So in all of the different things that you do, how do you keep your creativity ignited, or what do you do to refill your creative well?
Well, I don't think of it as a quantitative thing like that, really, because creation is something from nothing. So I don't wait to have the something to then spend the something. It would be like a person who, wants to go shopping and they don't have any money in their bank account, but they've got a credit card. I am my own credit card. I will borrow energy for myself. I think the main thing is that I grew up and evolved into having the philosophy that one can create, first of all. And that just means there's something that resides in my universe, if you will, in my own private space. I get an idea. I think this happened just the other day. I went out and I looked, and there were these, my wife had put outside some things to dry. And there were these, I don't know, pair of leggings and another pair of hose. And they looked like somebody hanging on. They looked like little arms and legs. And in my mind, I immediately make this connection of like, that could make a funny little animated thing. I ignored it for a while because I have lots of better things to do. But then I went back and I went, well, just for the heck of it, I'll take a photograph of it because it's not going to be there forever. They're going to dry and they'll be gone. So I'll just take a photograph with my phone. It's pretty simple. So then I didn't do anything with it for another couple of days. Then I had like an hour or so last night where I was like a little tired and nobody was pressing me to do anything. And I thought, all right, well, maybe I'll just stick some eyeballs and mouths on that. And anyway, I spent another hour animating those little creatures that were hanging up there. And then I went into the booth and recorded the sound of the line that I had thought of. And luckily these days, the technology is such that I don't have to spend weeks doing that. I can spend an hour, and that's permissible.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel good to do that. And I always learn something. That's the other aspect of creativity is that when we're being creative, we're taking an idea, right, that we have, and that exists in our universe, and it doesn't exist in the physical universe. The physical universe is, a lot tougher. Things have to fit exactly, and things can wear out, and maybe there's a problem with this thing, and there's all kinds of things to be solved. So every time you indulge in like taking an idea and putting it into the physical world, unless you're Tesla or something who has it all worked out in his head, you learn something. You're going to have various problems. Problems aren't bad. They're good. I think if a person is a creative person, they get used to the idea of creating their own problems. I'm like, I wonder if I could paint that. I'm sure you do this with your business. I wonder if I could record that in the 10 minutes I have before I have to leave. All these things are problems. And so you learn stuff, and that keeps you young and keeps you kind of engaged in life and creative.
Yeah, the word that kept coming up as you were talking, Jim, was curiosity and flexibility, right? Like just being so curious of the world around you and what you can learn from kind of what you pick up and play around with. So I feel like curiosity is such a key to
100%.
creativity.
Yeah. Curiosity, interest. I think a lot of what passes for that people write off as talent, like people say, well, you're so talented. I hear that. I've heard that all my life. You're so talented. And I get what they're saying, but it's a little bit of, well, you've been endowed with something special that other people don't have. Like, well, I don't really think I am. I think I'm just more interested. I've been allowed and able to pursue my interests. Luckily, I had a very upper middle class upbringing. There wasn't, a struggle for survival. So I had the ability to follow my interests and develop my interests, even though they were kind of small and indefensible. And that was a great luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in all the different things that you do, Jim, like you're talking about animating your own pantyhose and leggings characters.
Well, they weren't my pantyhose.
That's true. That's true. We need to clarify.
I never wear that shade.
In the different mediums that you work, kind of your process when you're approaching, like, whether it's a animated character on a show that you're doing or an actor, is there things that stay the same about your creative process when you're approaching something that you're working on, or do you really kind of reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, each thing is its own challenge. Now, I have a lot of confidence in my ability to come up with a snap answer. I'm not a person who is second guessing himself very much. And that comes with experience and with, I don't know, just the path I've been on. I'm like, I'm going to assume I know a good answer here. And I have a lot of faith in my mind. I don't do drugs. I don't drink. My mind is in pretty good shape for my age and my background and education and so forth. I'm not a fussy person. However, I will, if it's necessary, if it's like playing a character that I really don't have any experience with. I'm playing a character on Landman who's an attorney, and I'm back on season 2 for a couple of episodes. The first episode I did in the first season, it was very straightforward, and I could understand it without doing any research at all. The second one, I hit a brick wall. I'm like, I don't know what this guy is saying. I don't know what this means. So I had to dig down and do research just to be able to learn it, let alone perform it. So that was a very different process where I was like, well, you know what? My normal impulse, I'm empty. I've got nothing.
It's like a different language.
Yeah. So, I had to look up the words and I had to do some research and talk to some people who knew. And last year I did a movie where I was playing a retired fire chief, firefighter from New York City. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to apply what I've been, heard about in acting school, at my wife's acting school, the acting center. I'm going to actually talk to somebody who did this job and see what I can learn and see what I can grab from their personality even. And I'm a pretty good mimic. So if I talk to somebody for 20 minutes or something, I'm going to be able to portray them to a greater or lesser degree. So yeah, I put that to work then. I don't have too many assignments like that. I would like to have more, but mostly I get like things probably like the way you do, where you get, well, this video game and it's this guy, they all kind of sound a little bit similar in a lot of ways. The artwork is all kind of similar. And they go to great lengths to explain the world and the backstory of this character. And then at the end of the day, I want to know, is he Irish? Is he big? The main tool that I use, though, is my own first impulse. And I learned that from improv. When I studied improv and performed improv for years and years in New York City, and very quickly I learned that, your first idea is fine. Maybe you'll think of more ideas. We have a pretty amazing computer in our human minds. And if you ask your human mind a question, like, what would be something, that kids would enjoy as sort of a funny character? Your mind will spit out an answer. try it out.
Well, it's so interesting, Jim, because it's so simple at its core, and I think where a lot of people get I wonder if your wife sees this at the acting center. I think it's more about learning to trust that instinct, right? Like, I think that's where you see a lot of people, that's like their brick wall, is they have it and then they question it rather than act on the impulse and see what would happen if they just went all in.
Right. Exactly. And I think too, this is something that I, until not too long ago, I kind of had this affect me where I was like, I know there's a right answer here. If I get an audition, it's like, well, what are they looking for? And I want to match that thing they're looking for. And that's, I think now my philosophy is that's not the way to go. First of all, I know that they don't know what they're looking for. That's readily apparent. But also, what we enjoy as an audience, as consumers, is something kind of singular, something kind of unique, because each human being is very unique. We're not interested in seeing the same characters over and over again. We're interested in different points of view, which is one of the reasons why that's a hurdle for AI, is because AI kind of goes to the lowest common denominator, and it's going to scrub things that all kind of add up to an answer. That's the right answer, and boy, we're going to get super bored with that if we even connect with it at all. When you meet a new person, the fascinating thing about a new person is like, oh, that's really unexpected. Like a friend of mine, I was just talking to him yesterday. I didn't know him very well, and we had a lunch, and it's like, oh, you used to draw pictures too? Like, that's amazing. Unexpected things that come out. Like I worked with Dermot Mulroney on Chicago Fire not too long ago, and I was researching him, and it's like, oh, he's a concert cellist. Well, that's interesting, unexpected kind of richness that every human being has. When you're creating a character, you have a possibility of bringing that, because if it's coming from the well of your experience and your imagination, it hopefully doesn't look like anybody else's. It looks like just a new thing that you made up. And that's the thing that is of most value to people casting, as I understand it.
Well, and just like you brought up earlier, Jim, too, about creativity, the act of creation, it's never existed before. So even most of these characters, like when someone's going to audition, if you do get that role, that is how everyone will know that character. They will know it as you. Like that's how it will exist in their space and in their world. And so we get, I think, so much more freedom than we sometimes give ourselves credits. Like you said, what do they want? And it's like, we know they actually have no idea what they want. So why not take that creative liberty to, not make a bold decision for the sake of making a bold decision, but like have that trust that like somewhere in my brain and body, I will be able to create what my interpretation of that thing should be. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And that takes some discipline, because we want to come up with the right answer. I think it's probably the way we're trained in school and everything. There's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. There's an A and there's an F. You don't want the F, you want the A. And so we're all like, if we haven't kind of given up, then we're like, what is the right thing to do? I think that's what sends people to drama schools and colleges and stuff. It's like, oh, there's an answer out there and these people know it and I don't know it. I don't know. I didn't approach it that way.
What's interesting about this industry, right? It's an industry that's based on storytelling. So we spend our entire lives working on our craft and stretching ourselves and growing in different ways as artists. But it is also a business. So, for instance, like you working on your craft behind closed doors alone is great because you're working on your craft, but that alone probably will not get you the results that you want in regards to like your professional career. How have you balanced continually cultivating your craft while also implementing some business strategies to keep your professional career growing?
I'll tell you what I'm doing now, because I've been doing it now for 40 years. So I've changed a lot of tactics. But in general, I've spent a lot of time letting people know that I was available and demonstrating what I know how to do for free, whether it was improv shows in New York, or, you get invited to a reading of a play or a screenplay, or putting stuff up on YouTube and social media, things that I create. I'm demonstrating what my abilities are and exercising the willingness to do that. It's a promotional thing. It's also a creative thing. And like you said, it's a storytelling thing. So we're interested. We're interested in seeing what stories we have in our mind and what other people have in their minds. So I think I've distinguished myself by always keeping in people's faces, particularly people that could hire me or people that worked for before. I don't like to let people forget about me. And I know that it's very easy to do. You forget about the most amazing people in your life sometimes. Like if you haven't heard from them in a while, or there's nothing newsworthy about their existence, where you don't run into them on the street. There's a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of noise and a lot of things competing for our attention. So I've made it a habit throughout my career to reach out as often as I can to people that I know and to people that I don't know, and put myself onto these broad networks and platforms so that people will possibly run into me. And always with something that I think people will enjoy, so that I'm not just being a burden. I'm not like the IRS saying, "Hey, we exist." My message is 180 degrees the other direction. I'm like, I like to make you laugh. I like to make you smile. Here's where you find me. I'll be here every day. By the way, here I am again, and just keeping it up. And that I think has evolved too, because I'm fairly comfortable with it. I wasn't always so comfortable with it. And I think actors and creatives have to make their peace with exposing themselves so often, because I think a lot of us think, I don't want to overstay my welcome and I don't want to bother people. It used to be, I would send things out in the mail. I would send out a piece of paper to everybody I knew every week at least, with a cartoon on it or a little message or a flyer or whatever. And some people would say this thing. They would say, "You know what? Save a tree. Don't send me your flyers." And it makes you kind of recoil for a second. And then I'd realize that's one guy out of 3,000 people. The rest of them are all having a fine time. It's going to take a lot of time to build a tree out of one freaking piece of paper. So I'm going to take him off the list, and I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, Jim, you're a credit card, you're available. I'm getting some great, like, one-liners that are very like, it's gonna be cemented into.
I'm a Swiss Army knife,
Yes, you're not the IRS.
not the IRS.
Thank God. This would be a whole different conversation.
Very different. We went shorter.
Much shorter, as fast as we could possibly make it. You've had a career that spanned decades, and as you know, this industry, there's peaks, there's valleys, it ebbs, it flows, there's uncertainties. How do you deal with that? How have you dealt with that?
Well, it's been said by people wiser than me that life is a game, and games include goals, what you're trying to make, you're trying to get the ball in the hoop or whatever. And there are goals that we as actors try to make. We're trying to book a national network commercial. We're trying to get a featured role in a film. We're trying to get a series regular gig or a recurring guest star. There's all these little goals that when you score, it's like, yes. Because it adds up to survival. You will be able to pay your bills. You will be able to help your friends. You will be able to, in my case, I have a family. I can help my family. So it's a game. And the spirit of the game is what you mentioned before: curiosity, enthusiasm, being ready, being prepared, being alert, not giving up, figuring out ways to get an edge, to get a little bit more attention, or get another opportunity. And I learned this vividly from my mom, who was also a working actress. She was playing the angles a lot. She wasn't just, well, the best actress will get the part. She was like, well, and there's this other factor too, which is you have to get those opportunities somehow. And she always tells the story, and it's in her book. We had her put her together with a writer, and she did a memoir a few years ago. And in the book, she talks about she took a job on a movie. It was not a big part, but it was a big movie. And she did it because she had to support two kids. She was a single mom with two kids. But while she was seated, it was the movie Airport, not airplane, but Airport, which was the first of what became a series of airport movies back in the 70s. And it had Burt Lancaster and Dean Martin in it. It was a big movie. Sounds impossibly old school now. But she was a passenger on the plane, has a bomb go off in it. And so that's a sort of a thankless job, but it was like 5 weeks of sitting on a plane at Universal. So that was like good money, steady money anyway, not great money, but it was steady money for her. But while she was on that plane, she was seated next to somebody, and she used that relationship somehow by making friends with this woman who was another actress to meet a casting person and get a kind of a personal connection to that casting person somehow. I'll have to read the book again to see exactly how that happened. But then that casting person said, you might be right, Marion, for this part, that Gary Marshall's looking for a mother for this pilot, for this thing that later became Happy Days, that changed all of our lives. So she wasn't sitting back. She was looking and actively seeking, the connections to something better. That comes from dedication, that comes from courage, and all those things that I love about my mom. And so I've tried to not be a lazy guy and also seek out opportunities and meet people and go and do these things and be willing to, I don't know, even work for free just to meet somebody or to have a connection.
As you said that, Jim, I'm curious about your thoughts because I feel like even in Taylor and I are with the same voiceover agency. And what was super cool about how DPN ran a couple years ago was we all got to be together auditioning. You'd be in the halls with each other. It's how we made so many friends is you're sitting there for hours before you're, auditioning for McDonald's and go to room 2 and do Toys R Us or whatever. And I feel like you could tell the people in that room who were like okay taking a risk and the ones who were maybe a little bit more afraid of, like you said, the A, you get an A or an F, right? We all want to get the A. Like we want to get it right. And I feel like in what you're describing and that persistence and courage and perseverance, I feel like now, and I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing, I don't know if it's because we have social media where we are more connected and seeing what people are doing that it's like it seems like everyone's doing so much more than we are, so I feel like there's more fear than with what I've personally seen in some people who I would say are, 20s, maybe early 30s, really trying to make this a professional career. There's more hesitation in them saying yes and just kind of going for it than like when you're describing your mom or describing some of your own actions. I feel like I know some people like that. And I know when I am like that and operating that way, and then when I'm not. And I'm just curious if you've noticed that or what your take on that is of like, I just feel like there's more people kind of they want it and then they hesitate before they take that action.
Yeah, I think that the thing you mentioned about how we used to audition and we'd see our competition or our compatriots on a daily basis. When I started in New York, I was just talking to Jeff Bergman about this yesterday. We used to walk around often just in a cluster of actors from one ad agency
Yes.
to another and then back to our agents. And then we would split up and we'd reconfigure. And there was this ebb and flow of personal contact that was happening as a part of the job. And the thing about that that's great is many things about social activity that's great is that you kind of relax a little bit. You see, oh, okay, well, it's that guy and that guy. Oh, he's really big. He's really good. But I mean, he's sitting there with me, and look at his shoes are in as bad shape as mine are. And you begin to kind of calm down a little bit because it's like, all right, this is just people, and somebody makes a choice, they make a decision, another person makes another choice based on that, and it's not rocket science. With the removal of the social aspect to the auditioning process, and in many cases, the recording process, such as animated shows where everybody's off in their own booth like this, or they come in separately. It does become a little bit more mysterious. Like the means of production, the assembly line of entertainment it's digital. It's in another space. It's in a hard drive. It's not out in the world that I live in. It's not people and expressions and, oh gosh, I need to go to the bathroom and, oh, his backpack fell over in the middle of the thing. It's not stuff that you can easily understand. It's all this kind of like, you try to fill in the vacuum of understanding, of knowing what is this all about? I can see why it gets a little more off-putting and fear-inspiring because there's less stuff for you to hang your hat on. You don't know, where's the building this winds up in? Is it a building? Are there people there? It's vapor.
Yeah, nothing's tangible.
Yeah,
Yes.
nothing's tangible, and it's like you're kind of like, well, this is just a form of solitary confinement. It's just a very high-end form of solitary confinement. It's not something that anybody would be attracted to get into by that virtue, anyway, of the social aspect of it. So I think in that case, a way to defeat that is to get involved with some sort of an actual group of people that are doing something, maybe a play, maybe a reading, maybe an improv company, put together a little team of people where every week you get together and you shoot some silly videos. And then you'll feel like there's an actual physical connection to something in the world that you live in and not that we're all just sort of feeding this a laptop somewhere.
No, I appreciate that, Jim. Just I interviewed someone a week ago and they've been in the industry for a long time. And they said the one thing I would say to newer actors is like find a way to make it not lonely. Because I think post COVID, especially in voiceover, so often I think of like 2019 versus like now. And I'm like, wow, it for me, especially on the commercial side, is so different, like, from the auditioning process to what it's actually like working on a job. Now I'm in a closet that's converted into a studio, and like you said, I don't see anybody. The engineers I work with, the client, we are all in my headphones, and it's like a super small vacuum of the universe, and so how do you not go crazy when I'm like, it used to feel oh my gosh, the creative flow between all of us at DPN, like you said, we were relaxed. I felt very relaxed there because I'm like, having a great time talking to my friend. And then you go in and you focus on one thing, which is performing. And then they're picking your takes, they're giving you direction. You're not like your own engineer, you're not your own editor. You're not trying to like be the casting director and be like, okay, what do I, there's so much that we're doing now. And yet there's not, we have to make sure we are creating that community for ourselves.
Yes, I think that's a really good point.
You've done some directing of multicast audiobooks and tons of
Yeah.
other cool things. How has stepping into the role of a director changed your view of your own performance work?
Oh, well, see, my own performance work. I don't know that it changed my view of my own performance. I feel like I do what I do. I certainly have my viewpoint on my own, like in the world of audiobooks, for example, my viewpoint on what to do in an audiobook has changed a little bit. I don't these days, I don't try to be quite as creating an illusion of like this is a completely different actor, a different person. A new person just walked in the door. It sounds like this. It sounds like a completely different resonance. And I don't do that so much anymore because it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be this big showcase of my many talents. It could be just a nice story that somebody reads. But when I directed those multicast audiobooks for Galaxy Audio, I did something like 500 hours of recorded audio, fantastic stuff, old pulp novels and romances and westerns and everything all by one author. I learned how to direct other actors so that I didn't waste their performances. And it didn't come to me easily. People had to take me aside and say, hey, here's a better way to do that. And I'm like, oh, because for the reasons that we're talking about, the creativity, the uniqueness of a performer, the uniqueness of everybody's viewpoint and their taste level and their experience, you waste that if you're trying to mold them into doing a performance that you've already heard in your head. That's like, here's the right answer, match this right answer. And that's a waste of time. And it wastes the actor. I mean, actors do stuff that the director goes, no, that's not what I'm looking for. That's fine. But you should allow the actor to, what's your idea? Let's hear your take on this character. I mean, all I know is he's from Boston, so it would be nice to have a Boston accent. But what's he like? Have at it. And if I hear what they say and I look at what the author says or what the person writing the script says, and they're going in the same direction, fine. Or if I have a good idea that I think you might like, I'll say, hey, if you like it, here's an idea I had. And then if they go, yeah, I don't feel it, I go, great. But, that took me a few years to evolve that. But I try not to, when I do direct, which is very rare now, I try to not waste the genius of the actor. And by genius, I just mean their individual idea about a character. And if they've read the script and they know what it is and they've made some decisions, their decision is going to be just as good as mine, unless they're completely off the beam, and they got the wrong words or something, wrong definition of the word.
Which happens. I'm sure it happens.
Yeah, of course it does. But I'm a great advocate for the bright idea every individual brings to, any activity in the arts. We're experiencing a renaissance now, I think, in visual arts. I follow a lot of painters and creators on Instagram and other socials. And any given day, you can pick up and look at what an artist is doing. And you're like, boy, I never would have thought of making a painting out of that material. I never would have thought about painting that subject. Of course not. That is what a person decided on their own. And that is the richness of life. When we can share that with one another, it's kind of like saying, hey, I don't know if you knew, but there's this thing I just found and I want to show it to you. And you're like, I had no idea. That's wonderful because there's so much abundance of unusual and charming and alarming things in the world. There's no end. So that's what I try not to waste as a director.
And I've been lucky in the times that I've worked to work with, I think, good directors who, yeah, they, instead of coming in, like they might have ideas, but let's play first. Like, let's see what you have. And then we'll kind of mold it and shape it and like keep adding on to from there, which that's the fun part, that trust in each other that we'll figure it out together, but trusting the artist, like you said, if you were to do every role, it would look differently than all those different actors.
Yeah, exactly. Like recently I did that where I played every role. Somebody had the idea, a friend of mine had an idea. He's got this audio company and he says, we do this series where it's a script and it's a story and we have a person play every role. And at that point I was intrigued because I thought, well, I can change up my voice quite a bit. I can make people sound like completely different sort of characters. And it wouldn't be, no one would associate it with me. And then I have a conversation with a guy talking like, go back and forth like this. So I thought that's intriguing. At the end of the day, though, when I listen to it, I'm not that happy with it. Maybe somebody else is charmed by it. But for me, it's a little bit of sameness, not in the sound, not completely in the characters, but there is an underlying sameness because it all came from me. And I think it would be much stronger as a piece, richer, let's say, to have it done by individuals. That's all.
No, and that's an interesting perspective because you're like, even if it's a different take on all these characters, there's still a through line of you and your perspective and like the lens that you're looking through. You're in development on a movie that you
Yes.
are developing and starring in about an impressionist.
Yeah.
How do you like the development process? Can you describe a little bit about what that's like and what are some of the challenges that you face in the development process versus just being hired on as an actor?
Yeah, well, this is taking more responsibility, writing the script. I had the idea of the script and I tried to write the screenplay, and that's a very difficult thing for me to do. It's such a big, broad project. A screenplay is just so big and sprawling that I found that I didn't have the training to really hold on to it. So I hired a guy to do a first draft, and we worked together for a while on it. And I got it to a place where I liked it and then he didn't like it. So I took it over. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, this is now editing and adapting, and I'm much more suited to that. So at that point, I could take it over and comfortably. And then I worked with a couple of producers who also had some ideas. And I'm because of my improv background, I think I've become rather allergic to any kind of committee. I'm not interested in having everybody talk about what they think about something. I have no patience for it in my life. So I had to kind of make my peace with exposing the work to others and listening to what they had to say about it. At the end of the day, there's a reason why we have writers groups and writers rooms. It really can result in an improvement of the quality of the value. So I worked with these guys. I'm still working with them. A couple of guys I met at a film festival. I like them very much. We get along great. And we've been massaging the script and moving it forward to a place where we can show it to people. It got good coverage. And there's still more work to be done on it because one of the challenges of doing a movie about an impressionist. This is my character is a guy he's not really very like me. He has a skill set that's like me, but he's in a, not a very good place. He's a kind of a cheap impressionist working in a crappy place in Las Vegas. He had probably done better before, and then he'd sort of collapsed to this role that he's playing now. So he's in a crappy place, but he has to have routines or some material that he's doing on stage. We're going to see that at various points. It's not the bulk of the thing by any means. It's just we need to see him performing so that we remember what he's doing and what he does. So you want to keep those things as fresh as possible and not have them go totally out of date. So, the routines that I wrote a couple of years ago are basically placeholders. And so we have work to do where we're going to, right before we shoot, and probably the day of the shoot, we're going to freshen up that material so that, by the time it goes through the whole assembly line, it's not hopelessly out of date or irrelevant or, oh gosh, that guy was canceled. Didn't you know? I'm like, oh my God, or
Great.
you made that, don't make that joke. Oh God,
Yeah.
you know,
Too late. There's a whole piece about it.
Yeah, it's like dealing with very perishable materials. It'd be like being in the fish in the seafood trade or something. But I'm enjoying it, and the response I'm getting from people, and I'm slowly putting together a team of people who are, very proactive about going ahead. And now we gotta get the money together, but we've got a nice team forming up, and it's not a lot of money, but it's more money than I have. And so we're gonna put it together and start shooting it next year. I'm encouraged by the people that have read it, that liked it, that are interested, and that want to see it happen because I think it's going to be a very special tale and very fun.
No, it sounds really fun, and I mean, Las Vegas and a guy who's kinda, like you said, collapsed into what he is now. I'm like, there's a lot of good fodder to make this, I think, exciting to see what comes of this person, and I'm so curious, Jim, because it sounds like you have a lot of freedom and flexibility and curiosity in your process of when you're bringing your talent to a character like in Landman per se. Do you feel like you have more freedom and flexibility in creating a project and developing it that's like your own than when you are walking into someone else's world as an actor for hire?
Oh, well, really? Well, now that you're phrasing it that way, I think that one always has the same level of freedom. It's whether there is the added thing of like when I'm doing my own projects, which happens all the time, I get an idea and I go, I think I could do that. I have a green screen. I have that kind of jacket. Yeah, I could do that pretty fast tomorrow. Something for YouTube or something I think will make people laugh or it just would be fun to perform. And I don't have then the added thing that comes in of I want to get this because it's going to make me some money. I know I can just go ahead and do it. The other stuff that comes in, the audition that comes in, like I did an audition the other day for a very big medical show, and like all right, well, I do feel freedom in creating the character, but I also want to get this job. So, there's a little bit of like, well, I want to grab them right away on the audition. And I like to do self tapes. I don't know about you.
I was curious because again, I like both for different reasons. I liked going into the room for certain reasons, but I also like self tapes too. I feel like there's a different level of creative control that we get to have that
Yeah.
we don't always get to have in the room. So it sounds like you feel the same.
Yeah, I really like it. I like being able to work on it as long as I want. I like being able to light it and adjust the sound and the
Yes.
chair. I don't know how many times I used to go into a good audition somewhere and it'd be like, "A really messed up chair." I'm like, "Damn it." One time I was like, my knees were up. It was like, "Geez, this chair is just awful. I can't do this audition." They were like, "Just use the chair." I'm like, "Oh, for
Yeah.
Christ's sake."
And you're supposed to be like a high powered lawyer. And you're like, I feel like I'm in
Yeah,
a clown chair.
exactly. Or breaks or something. Although when we get the jobs, it is a little bit of the added pressure of, all right, now's your time. The clapsticks are gonna go, and it's your time to act that part, and we need you to do it in 1 or 2 takes, or if a soap opera, we need you to do it in a half a
This is
take.
it.
Yeah, so that kinda gets removed, but I think for the audition, gives me the freedom of just, like, saying, "Here's how I think it would be really cool. This is how I'd love to do this," and it's the same freedom. It's like whether you decide to exercise it or not, or whether you get too distracted by, "God, I hope I get this job." So I think if you can develop, which comes with time, certainly, if you can develop a kind of I'm just gonna knock this out. I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna come up with an idea that I think is great. I'm gonna perform it. I'm gonna let it go. If you can come up with that, the freedom of that, of like not feeling like everything is so critical and so earth shaking and just kind of like, it's hard though. It's hard though. You get a commercial, you get an audition for a movie and you're like, oh, I would love to be in this movie. There's a million people competing for this movie. Oh my God, what do I have to do? But that will inspire something too. So you always have the freedom, and it's whether you really want to deploy it, as they say.
Absolutely. I feel like that's such a great soundbite, Jim. Because again, in so much of our conversation, I'm just thinking about so many people I know who are so wildly talented, but there's that hesitation or that fear. And I'm even recognizing it when I have it in myself sometimes to be like, wait a second, that's not helpful. That's like very restrictive and being action oriented and just like kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and being bold. Landman season 2 is coming out very, very soon in a couple days, and you got brought back as a reoccurring role. What does that feel like when you kind of come into like you're a part of the cast, you have a couple episodes. How does that feel with your preparation process, working with a new cast and crew?
Well, it's very, very exciting in this case because I did the first episode and I did a self tape, hired off the self tape, wound up going to Fort Worth and doing a day's worth of work out there with Billy Bob Thornton and Demi Moore. I was excited because I didn't know too much about the show, had not been on the air. I was not given the luxury of reading the whole script. I had my pages, but I knew that Taylor Sheridan is extremely talented and a great writer. And I knew I did a little bit of research and there was a podcast about the oil fields that it's based on. So I listened to that podcast and I was like, I would love to be a part of this story. But once I shot it, then there was a long time of nobody talking about Landman. Nobody knew about it. I didn't know about it. I hadn't seen it. Nobody'd seen it. It wasn't on. And then when it launched in September of 2025, not a peep. I didn't hear anything from anybody. Demi Moore, when she'd go on social, she'd talk about her movie, The Substance. I'm like, is anybody? I didn't subscribe to Paramount Plus, so I didn't know. Is this a good show? Is anybody watching it? Then when my episode aired, which is the last episode of the first season, it aired in like November. Suddenly, all my friends who had been quietly watching the show said, "Oh my God, this is my favorite show. This is a great show." I'm like, "Oh, cool. I guess I better watch it too." So I bit the bullet and got Paramount Plus, and they got a lot of great stuff on Paramount Plus, so that
They
was good.
do.
And I started watching the show, and I was, to my delight, it's a wonderful show. And Billy Bob Thornton is freaking hilarious. Anyway, so now we're in season 2. So right after they get picked up for season 2, I reached out to Billy Bob and I said, "Hey, congratulations." And then about a week later, I heard, "Hey, well, we're having you back for an episode." I'm like, "Great, great." And then I did another episode. So I did 2 in the new season. And as I alluded to earlier, the first script I got, I was like, I don't know what this guy's saying. I can't figure this out. So I had to crack that. And I worked very hard on it because I did not want to be the actor in the room that can't get through the speech. I've had that experience. I am not crazy about it. Not my favorite. The guy that can't remember the name of it's just awful. So I wanted to be like very pro. and really do the material justice and keep the story rolling. And I did accomplish that. And then they said, there's another earlier episode that you're going to do. I'm like, oh, earlier in time. Okay. Anyway, very interesting. But I still have not seen an entire full script of Landman,
Wow, even as you're filming and
even as you're
everything.
filming. And I think if I'd pressed the case a little more or stomped my feet or cried or something, I might have gotten one. Actually, I didn't notice. It was like somebody said, so have you read the script? I'm like, I haven't. I've been so busy trying to learn my lines and figure out what I'm saying. But it's great to be part of something that everybody's talking about, that everybody's aware of, and that is a really good quality show. I've been connected to good shows in the past. I was on a show called The Big Door Prize for Apple TV a couple years ago, which was a similar kind of recurring role. Nobody really watched that show. So, or at least not in the numbers that Landman's getting. So who knows what attracts people to it? But obviously, Taylor Sheridan is a runaway train, and there's just a lot of success in his wake. And Billy Bob is just killing it, and everybody else in the cast is killing it.
And I have a feeling, even just from what I've seen or what I've heard, I feel like people are prepped for season 2. People are ready. Like, there's a couple days left until they have it. So I feel like season 2, I think, is going to have a little bit of a different effect right off the bat than the previous season did. And we're in our last couple questions, Jim, and I just have to tell you how I first ever found you. I'm sure you get this a lot from girls my age, but Our Lips Are Sealed with Mary-Kate and
Oh, Our
Ashley.
Lips, I was going to say, yeah, Mary-Kate and Ashley.
One of my favorite Mary-Kate and Ashley movies.
Taylor and her mom and I, we all went down to Australia and shot that in Sydney. That was my first trip to Australia.
That's the funniest part, 'cause I remember when I first met Taylor, and yeah, then I was like, "Of course I know your dad." I was like, "Our lips are sealed, are you kidding me?" I was like, as a kid, yes. You guys were in the witness protection program, you were, like, the mailman, and I was like, "I remember all of it." Classic.
It's so funny. It was a great job. Bryan Cranston was supposed to do that part. I have to ask him one day why he didn't wind up doing it, but it was before, gosh, I think it was, well, it's definitely before Breaking Bad. I don't know if it was before Malcolm in the Middle or not, but he probably didn't want to play a dad anymore. Like,
He was like, "Yeah, something else." Last couple questions, Jim. Someone comes to you to pick your brain for advice. They're an actor, they're pursuing a career. Let's say they've been actively pursuing acting professionally for like 2 to 3 years. They're in classes, they're trying to find rep, they're doing student films and short films. They're in the hustle, they're trying to make it happen. Where would you tell them to put their focus, or what are some skills they should be focusing on building?
well, this stuff that I've been talking about promoting yourself is very important. Do interviews, do podcasts, figure out a way to just keep reminding people gently who you are and what you can do. And there's lots of ways to do that very cheaply now. It used to cost a lot of money to buy stamps and buy cassettes and DVDs and all that stuff, but now it's pretty cheap. So do that. And for what it's worth, persistence is an incredible, useful quality in life, in anything you're doing. When I was first starting out in New York, when I would see actors on the street that I recognize, it's quite common to see Broadway actors on the street or film actors on the street. There was a guy I stopped and I'd just seen him in a Broadway play. His name was Bill McCutcheon. He was a wonderful old character actor. He's the kind of character actor I'm probably going to grow into being at some point. I remember stopping him when I was in my 20s and I was saying, Bill, you were great in that play. Do you have any words of advice? And he said to me, persistence. And at the time I thought, of course, persistence. Yes, I'm all over that. Persistence is great. And now all these years later, I realize persistence. Oh, it's so much broader and more elastic than I really credit it to be. Persistence means hanging around, doing the same thing, continuing, continuing to take classes, continuing to make choices, continuing to try to get a better opportunity, to try to meet people, to try to develop one's own projects, to try to take more responsibility for one's career. That's all that, persistence, like keep every day you're creating it. It doesn't exist unless you get out of bed and start creating it.
I feel like that's such a theme of what we've talked about. It's the action, share, be available, put yourself out there. Like, don't sit back in the hesitation. Just see what happens when you make that opportunity for yourself and you are like gently nudging all of those around you to be like, hey, I'm still here. Like, want to make something. Let's do it.
Yeah, people like you, they're interested in you, they're hoping you do well, they admire you, they tolerate you, that so we're not bugging anybody, we're just kinda reminding them, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, hey, I'm glad you told me." And if you've ever done any casting yourself, you realize, you get this sheet and it says, "We need to fill this role, this role, this role." You're like, "God, who do I know?" You're like, "I can't think of anybody." I know a woman, 40s, African American. Who the hell? And so you need to be reminded, and you go, "Oh, thank God you told me. Yeah, I was just thinking about it. I just need that right now." So it's a favor that we do to casting too, to remind people.
Absolutely. Final question, Jim. This podcast is called Get Messy because the process is so messy that we are all in, and no person's, blueprint for success looks identical to anybody else's. This could be personally, this could be professionally. What's the messiest thing about you?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately well known to me and my family is that allow a lot of things to accumulate on flat surfaces.
Oh,
So
okay.
papers and paintbrush that I have to fix, or, a bunch of notes from a meeting I had, on an adapter and a light that I like to use in my It's all over the desk. And then there's the filing that sits there, and this desk in here, which luckily you can't see, is festooned with a lot of debris of various kind of, like, okay, does this have to be here? I guess it does. You know, so I'm not a person who at the end of the day goes back and see, now what have I taken out that I need to put away?
Oh, you are describing my husband. It's bewildering
Yeah.
to me because he doesn't see it.
Yeah. I've seen him at the meetings when we discuss how
You
much stuff
have.
we're going to strew around.
Yes. Jim, this has been so much fun. Where can people come hang out with you? Socials, your website, where can they come find more of you?
Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I'm at Jimpressions on Instagram. I do live broadcasts several times a week just to kind of stay in touch with people and to make some noise and remind people that I exist and do voices. And I haven't done too many impressions here, but you can see me do a lot of impressions on Instagram. Oh, I never stop. And JimMeskimen.com. If you ever want to get in touch with me, that's probably the best way, JimMeskimen.com. And I'm on TikTok and LinkedIn as well. I'm just about all the popular platforms. So I've enjoyed talking to you, Maddie. It's great.
Same, Jim. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. You're the real hero if you've made it this far. Thanks so much for hanging out today, and check out the show notes for any resources or cool info mentioned in today's episode, or places to follow along if you want to hang out some more. I'm rooting for you today and always. Stay messy.